Hello and welcome everyone to another Python 3 tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to be looking at try, except and finally, which are used for error handling. We know about errors, but there are two types of errors, a compile time error and a runtime error. A compile time error happens when there is something wrong in the code and your program doesn't run. For example, you forget a colon after the if statement, or you forget a round bracket after the print statement. So such errors are called as compile time errors. And with a runtime error, the program runs fine, but because of some wrong input, or let's say we try to access a missing file, it will cause an error, and such errors are called as runtime errors. To handle runtime errors, we use try and except, and we'll talk about finally a bit later, but first let's look at an example. Suppose we have a program where we take age from the user and the age is an int. So let's do that. So age equals int and input, let's say age, and let's print something. So print something. So this code should work fine. So let's run it, and you can see it works. It asks for the input and let's pass 23, and you can see it works. It asks for the input and then it prints something. Now let's run this code again, and instead of passing an integer, we'll pass a character. So let's say a, and now you can see we get an error. And also notice that it doesn't print something. So this is because after we encounter an error in the program stops running. So to solve such errors which occur at runtime, we use try except. So let's see how we can solve this with try and except. Now to use try, we simply type try and then colon, and whatever code that might cause an error, you put it inside the try block. So we'll put the age inside the try block. And to handle such errors, we use the except block. So except and then exception as e. Now if you want to print the error, we can do print e. So this will print the error, or we can have a custom message. So let's say error occurred. So now let's run this code. Now let's pass a character. So this should cause an error and stop the program, but now we have try except in the code. So let's press enter, and now you can see we get error occurred, which we printed in the except block, and it also prints something. So this means that our code didn't stop working. So this is why you might need try except, so that your program doesn't crash in between use. So just to summarize, inside the try block you put the code that might cause errors, and inside the except block you put what you want to do if an error occurs. It is kind of similar to if else. If there are no errors, it will run the code inside the try block, but if an error occurs, it will jump to the except block. Now let's say we had the print something inside the try block. So let's remove it from here. So now let's run this code, and let's say an error occurs. Let's say we pass a, and now you can see it doesn't print something, it directly jumps to the except block. So this is because whenever an error occurs in the try block, the line on which the error will occur, Python will directly jump to the except block, so it will neglect all the remaining lines. That is one thing you might want to keep in mind before using try and except. And you can have multiple lines of code in the try and except block, it's up to you. Now let's talk about finally and why you might need finally. Now we know that when we open a file, we are supposed to close it. Now instead of actually opening a file, we'll use print statements to represent file open and file close. So let's create a try except case. So try, and let's print file open. And let's say we have an error. So in Python or any other programming language, when you divide a number with 0, it will cause an error. So let's say 5 divided by 0. So this will cause an error. Now let's say we close our file. So file close. And then we type our except block. So except, exception as E. and let's print the error. So we'll print E. Now let's run our code. And now you can see it opens the file, then we have an error, so it jumps to the except block. So we are not able to close our file. So what we can do is, or what you might think you can do is, we can take the file close and then put it inside the except block. Now let's run this and see what it does. And sure enough, it works. It says file is open, then it prints our error, and then it says file close. But now let's say the error is not present in the code. Now let's run this. Now when we run this, you will see we have the same problem again. It says file open. It prints the output, but we are not able to close our file yet. So one thing you might think is we can take this out of the try and except block. So now let's run this. And now you can see it works. It says file open, it prints the output, and it says file close. And even if we had an error on this line, it will still handle the error and then close the file. But suppose we have an exception in the except class. Exception basically means error. So if we have an error in the except class as well, then we'll not be able to print file close. So let's have an error. So let's say phi divided by 0, and we'll also need an error in this case because we need to trigger the except class. So phi divided by 0, and now let's run this. And now you can see it prints file open, then we have an error, and then it jumps to the except class, but we have an error in the except class as well. And you can see this in the error. It says during handling of the above exception, another exception occurred. Now as I said, when you open a file, you are supposed to close it, or there might be other tasks that you want to do before the program exits or before the program stops its execution because of an error or something. So to do those tasks, we use finally. So finally, and whatever you put inside this block will run no matter what, even if there are errors in the try or except block, or if there are no errors in the try or except block, this finally block will always run. So now let's print file close inside it. And you can see we have errors in the try block and the except block as well. And in the previous case or in the previous run, this didn't work. So let's run this again. And now you can see it says file open. So it prints the file open. Then we have the error in the except block. So it jumps to the except block. Then we have an error. But instead of causing the program to stop, it jumps to the finally block. It prints file close. And then it stops the program execution and prints the error. So I hope you understand what finally is. So this finally block will always run no matter what, even if you have errors or no errors in the try or except block. So you put all your important statements that you want to happen in the finally block. So just to summarize, in the try block, you put the code that might cause an error. In the except block, you try to handle that error. And in the finally block, you put all your important statements that are supposed to happen even if an error occurs in the program. So that's about all for try, except, and finally. And if you're wondering what this exception is in the except statement, so this exception can handle pretty much every error in programming, in Python programming. And there are specific types as well. So there is one called as name error. And this only handles errors related to variables which are not defined. Any other errors it cannot handle. So I personally prefer using exception because it can handle pretty much any error in Python programming. So that's about it. This concludes the video. Hope you guys are able to understand the tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you liked it, and until next time.